Namaste, good evening all. Welcome to the day 7 of the Let Go Discovering Lasting Happiness. So sit comfortably. Check that your posture is comfortable. Eyes gently closed. Awareness on the breath for a few rounds. Observe the normal breathing. As you continue watching the breath, feel the calmness, the posture becoming more comfortable, steady. Let's chant 3 rounds of Omkara. Each time you breathe in, as you breathe out, continue with the Om chanting. Inhale deeply. Bring the palms together in Namaskara Mudra. Omkara and the prayer all together. Breathe in. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome all. Namaste again. So as we have seen in all the last few days of the talks, that what is the Vedanta trying to tell us? Yeah, what is Vedanta? All the Upanishads teachings. What is it trying to tell us? That find your own nature. What is our nature? And in all the different talks that we had, whether it be the Atma Pariksha or the Sukha Dukha Pariksha, the Avastatraya Prasthana, then we saw the Panchakosha Viveka. In all that, what we found was that recognize that your true self is that Ananda, the joy within, yeah, the silence within us. That is our true self. The outer world, yes, is there. We have to interact with the outer world. So we do it, but with the thought that, yes, I am that peace inside. With that, when you interact with the outside world, we are not stressed up. Yeah, so that is the key. What Vedanta says, that observe your mind when you are in a state of sukha, when you are in a state of dukkha. How is the mind? Yeah, so that is also, they say that you develop your own prakriya. Prakriyas are methods of investigation. So how is the mind when I'm interacting with people, or when I'm talking to people, or when I'm calm? How is my state of mind? So this is what the investigation or the prakriya that we need to do. So yesterday we saw that the different paths, whether do we really follow the Jnana Yoga or the Yoga Marga, because Jnana Yoga is the path of knowledge, attending satsang, reading of scriptures, and understanding them, what it is trying to tell us, which is not everybody's cup of tea. And even yoga demands that you have a self-discipline. Yeah, there are certain kriyas that need to be practiced, lifestyle changes that we need to do as we are going along the yoga path. Again, which is not possible for everybody. Yes, yoga, they do it as a physical practice, but then we know that yoga is just not the physical practice, but one needs to go beyond the physical body and do the other practices. So are we ready for those changes that we need to do? So what was said is, and Shastriji has beautifully pointed out, that if you're not able to do that, you can follow the path of karma kanda. What are the karma kanda path? Yesterday we saw that the path of worship, your doing of your puja, daily puja, that can be a path where you can calm down the mind. Yeah? When you're even doing the preparation for the puja, beautifully Sage Narada says that puja adishu anuraga iti. It is said by Sage Parasharya, saying that when you're doing those preparation, how is it? Yeah, you're having that shraddha, the joy within when you're doing all those work. So that, what does all this do? It helps you to calm down. So can we maintain that calm state in even after the puja is over, again continue with that calm state in whatever activities that we do? We saw that, yes, that can be a path that we can choose. Or the other path is the path of japa, the Omkara Dhyana. Again, chanting of Omkara leads us to that silent state. Again, in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, he beautifully brings out the point that tasya vachakaha pranavaha. The Brahman is known by the sound of Omkara. So if we can concentrate on the Omkara, doing the japa, that also leads to the calm silent state. So today we will see what are the other methods by which we can be in that silent state, recognize that we are that peace inside. So one is the path of Karma Yoga and the Bhakti Yoga. So we have Prabha Krishna with us, presenting the path of Karma Yoga, and Dr. Vidya presenting the path of Bhakti Yoga. So over to Prabha. Hello, Prabha.
Hello. Thank you, Vijaya. So good evening to all of you on this lovely rainy Saturday evening. So let me just share the screen. Vijaya, let me know, are you all able to see me? See the screen?
Yeah. Yeah, it's clear.
So, like Vijaya mentioned, that the Shubha Karma activities, which the rituals and the worship and all, which we do every day, or can we also maintain that state of silence even after the japa and the rituals which you do every day? In the same way, what all actions we are doing, can we maintain have that kind of an attitude? Is what I'm going to be talking about today. So this is called Karma Yoga. So now in the beginning itself, let's first understand how we all are working right now. So what is the, so many things we are doing every day, so many different kinds of activities we are doing. It could be, even breathing. It could be doing something in the kitchen, or being a part of housework as well as office, and taking care of children. So many different activities we are doing. So there are some activities, maybe you might be saying that I hate it. So there is like, okay, I hate it. Or you might be wondering that, okay, my hard work is absolutely unacknowledged. I'm not being appreciated at all. Nobody even encourages me. Or if I'm doing the work, I'm not receiving the kind of appreciation which I am expecting to be, to get it. So, or I'm absolutely multitasking. So many things I'm doing. I'm taking care of this, that, this, and so many. It's like almost I'm a person with 10 arms, and I'm stressed up. I feel so stressed up. At the end of the day, I'm exhausted. Or you are in a kind of a job where you think that you are not absolutely in sync with that. You feel that, okay, I'm stuck because of my responsibilities. I'm stuck there and I don't know how to come up. I might have a boss who's always, unacknowledging me, who's to a bias towards me, or I'm in a job where I don't like what I'm doing, but what to do? I have to be there. Or you think that, okay, I have too much of expectations on myself, that okay, I have to be perfect in whatever I'm doing. I have to really go do this. In this 1 year, I have a goal that I have to come to this salary level, or I have to do these many courses, or I have to reach this level. So either we have high expectations on ourselves, or we put expectations on the outwardly situations also. Okay, I have to have a situation where it is a very smooth road, where I can go very well without any obstacles from people. So these are the way we might be, observing, or looking at our work. Maybe so you could just, after the session, if you could just think about like what all the areas of activities where you feel like that, maybe it is time for you all to introspect after today's session. So what is karma yoga? The karma yoga is karma means action. So do not misunderstand as karma like, okay, my past karma. So today we are talking about action. What are the activities here, the action here? So, and everything we do and think is action, like our body, mind, our tongue, our speech, vaksthana, so many things, our body organs are all working. Everything is action there. So you could not you cannot say that, okay, I'm sitting in a cave and I'm absolutely inactive. No, even if you're sitting quietly and listening to me, your mind is working, you are listening, your body organs are working. So there is action everywhere, whatever you do and think. And can we remain without action? Bhagavad Gita very beautifully, talks about it in chapter 3rd. Let me just quote it. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krita karyate hyavashah karma sarva prakriti jair gunaihi. There is no one who can remain without action even for a moment. Indeed, all beings are compelled to act by their gunas. So Sri Krishna beautifully tells Arjuna that, see, that we cannot remain without action even for a moment. Every time we are, doing some kind of action or something. So what is the thing we have to be doing? So we are having a lot of activities either inside us or we are doing in the outside world and the Vyapara activities there. But do you think that we should just leave everything and just go somewhere to the Himalayas and say that, no, I'm going to be absolutely inactive because I'm being distracted and I cannot tolerate the chaos there because the situations are not helping me in the sadhana path. So I'm going to go away. Or like Sri Krishna says, face the world and do your actions as a karma yogi. So this is a very beautiful thing because this path is very close to my heart, karma yoga. So whatever I'm speaking today is all just coming from my heart here. So the beautiful insights from Shastriji and Raghuramji's lectures. So face the world and do your actions. So this is where it's very, very important, like Sri Krishna says in chapter 3 and shloka 6 actually, where he says that you might be having so many distractions, so many chaotic things around you, the outer world you might be having, but yet the inner world, only you have the right, like very beautifully yesterday Dr. Vidya talked about, is you have the freedom to face the world, be the real inner self and be there and do your actions as a karma yogi. How do we do our actions as a karma yogi? Let's see. So Shastriji talks about 4 aspects here. Sangam tyaktva phala anusandhana rahitya Ishvara arpana drishtya yajna drishtya. So this is very interesting concepts here. Sangam tyaktva. So again, quoted here, Yogastaha kuru karmani sangha tyaktva dhananjaya. Be steadfast in yoga, O Arjuna. Perform your duty and abandon all attachments to success and failure. So this is very, very important for all of us here. That is, the steadfastness is very important in all our actions. So we do all our duties, we do all our activities in our day-to-day life, but let us try to lose that attachment that, okay, I am having a meeting with my boss there. It has to go fantastically well. It has to really go well. I have to outshine myself so that everyone starts appreciating me, that, wow, you did a fantastic presentation. So we are so attached to that outcome of that, that, okay, let it be a success. So we are doing something, we are preparing. I'm sure women here, you are preparing a recipe which you just got it from a website and you are starting to prepare it. And in the starting of the preparation itself, you will be wondering, will it be successful? Will it be good? Will it be good? Will my children like it? Will my husband like it? Okay, so there's so many thoughts running rather than being in the activity and enjoying what you are doing, enjoying the process of that cooking, that recipe there, enjoying the process of all the things happening there, being mindful there. Immediately our thought go to the success or the failure. Will it be successful? Will it be failure? Okay, if it is successful, I will put a selfie and post it in Facebook. So this is the way sometimes we think about it. So the equipoised nature of approaching any action is very, very important, and we lose the attachment towards the result of that work you do. That is very, very important, that let us not keep thinking whether it will be successful or failure. Very beautifully, I have read in a book that whatever you do, think it as an experience. Okay, whether do not think that, oh, it was absolutely flop. I checked from the recipe, I did it, but it is a flop. That recipe is nonsense. Or you presented, you had a presentation and it was not, maybe you had some failure there, you stumbled somewhere, you forgot, you went blank, and you would be thinking that, yeah, it was a failure. Or you failed an exam, your child failed an exam, and you suddenly, you keep asking, did you fail, did you fail? Okay, have you failed? I hope you didn't fail. That is a question we ask. Whether that, or we are, you could say that, how was the process of preparing for the exam, or the process of preparing for that subject? So that is the way we could lose the attachment towards the end result. We lose attachment towards the strong likes and dislikes, is what Shastriji talks about. Is let us not always think that I hear people saying that I hate cooking, Prabha. I just absolutely hate it. But you know what? I have to do it. What can you do? I have to do it. And now COVID times, can't have a cook also. I'm just stressed up. Or we sometimes say, um, I love that. I love to do. I have that passion to do. But what to do? The situation around me at home is not making me do. I just hate my situations. So there are so many things we have, these likes and dislikes. You like that, you don't like it. We keep hearing children say, I hate it, I love it. But you would be amazed to see that we also have those. From us, the children learn actually. So phala anusandana rahitya. So anusandana or phala, that is, do not try to keep thinking about the result. So Shastriji mentioned, okay, you're not able to lose the attachment. At least, try not to keep thinking about it. Don't try to keep thinking about always about, okay, what's happening. Okay, don't try to keep having that anticipation that, okay, oh, will, after my presentation, what will people, tell, okay, did I do well, did I do well? Is there so much of anticipation about the result there? So and this anticipation not only, it's as actually is contagious. When you are having in that anticipation mode, you're already in that reactive mode, or there is inner turmoil there. Whatever actions or activity which you do in the outer world, that restlessness will be there. So this is where we need to kind of immediately, be aware every moment of our activities, that let us not have that anticipation. Let us do without expecting. So people think that, Prabha, I'm not being in an NGO. My service is not selfless. So how can you say that that without expectations I have to do? I need that within this year. I need that. Okay, I need this much of sal, this much of this. I need to come here. If I'm running, I need to reach that 20 kilometers or one marathon there. That is my goal. And then how can you say that do anything without expectations? It might be looking very interesting, but I don't think it is practical. Actually, it is very much practical. Enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy your work, whether it is your housework or whether you're having duties to your responsibilities to your parents or in-laws, or so many activities, or at work level, or many, or you are doing a service. Like I say, you are part of an organization or part of you're running an organization, or you are being part of an organization as a volunteer. Whatever you're doing, try to have that, that mental attitude, that let me just enjoy whatever I'm doing. Let me just be in the moment of whatever I'm doing, rather than expecting that others do this and this. Others, my colleagues around me have to behave in this way so that I am remaining happy. My result, or result of this and this, I have to reach that goal, so I have to have that drive. And if I don't have that drive, then I will not be able to go. So let's not have that much of, excessive focusing. So this is where you tend to excessively focus there. So another very beautiful concept here is Ishvara Arpana Drishtya. So as the picture itself, you could see that this person, this lady has done all the work, and absolutely just left everything. He just arpanamastu, that is absolutely surrendered the result. And if we have this attitude, then just imagine how peaceful we would be. We have an attitude of acceptance, that is, okay, I have done this, I have done whatever I'm supposed to be doing sincerely, diligently, in a very enjoyable manner, I accept whether, how the result. I absolutely, surrender everything, the result, everything to the Almighty. So in that way, when you think about it, the ego will not be there. What happens most of the time in our activities, one hurdle in our karma yoga path is ego. Which we need to, we have to keep checking ourselves, because the moment you have done it and it is a success, we always say that I have done it. You know what, I am very good, I am excellent, I am much better than you. You lack these capabilities, I have these capabilities, so I have come it, I did it. So we start thinking in that way. But the moment of this Ishwara Arpanam, that is, we surrender everything whatever we have done in the beginning itself. We have that surrendering attitude. Then we start thinking that, okay, we are only a proxy, we are only an instrument here. Like Raghuramji talks very beautifully in the Jnana Marga also, that we do not possess knowledge, the knowledge flows through us. In that way, the I factor is gone. Here also the I factor will go when you start when you have that bhava of surrendering. In the beginning itself, you would observe that you are maybe your grandma and all. In the beginning of cooking itself, they will close their eyes, do one small rangoli, close their eyes and say that, okay, okay, oh God, let this day be wonderful, let whatever I'm cooking here nourish everyone. So that surrendering attitude, that bhava is there. In there the I will be dissolved. And that time, from the sankoch, from the narrow mindedness, so that I did it, it is all I, all the narrow mindedness, excessive focusing, I have to do well, I have to do this, it has to be a success, it has to be fantastic, it has to be appreciated, acknowledged. From there, when you have this bhava, from sankochata, that is from narrow mindedness, absolutely to vistarata, to expansiveness. So that's what we would feel when you approach any work or activity with this attitude. So Yajna Drishta, again, wonderful concept here. That is Yajna Drishtya is here. It's an attitude of offering every action to the Lord there. So there we are surrendering. Here also is almost is a surrendering here, but it's a very different, interesting concept here. As I was reading through Shastri Ji, I was trying to absorb whatever it was written there, and I was just thinking that reflecting on what all activities which I am doing, and am I having that Yajna Drishta attitude. So here, what happens? What are all the enjoyment activities we do? In a day, we might be having some enjoyment activities and maybe some work activities, maybe which you might not be enjoying. So either we might be sitting and watching TV, which can be an enjoyment or self-soothing for me, or you you love fitness and you love running, you love that fast-paced exercises. That is what you want to spend your excessive energy. Or you are a foodie, you just love food and you just want to have your favorite food and you just want to indulge. Even this COVID time, you really feel like going to the restaurant and indulging. So my children say that, when the restaurant, when we are able to go to the restaurant, I would do a namaskar to the waiter. So that, so now we are all looking forward for that enjoyment. But now the thing is, how can we convert this enjoyment activities to an activity called yajna? So that is very, very important here. So how can we the indulgence be replaced by moderation? Even Sri Krishna says also, no, yukta ahara viharasya, everywhere try to have moderation, whether you are eating, whether you are in your recreation ability, whether you are mode of conduct, everywhere. So even in a jagrat state, swapna, everywhere state, sleep state, try to have that moderation. That moderation is very, very important. And here, in the next slide, I want to explain that, this boga to upasana. That is, boga is all the enjoyment activities we do and how we can convert it into a meditative or into the upasana stage. So because this is a very, very important for all of us. I hope I'm able to convey it in a much easier way to all of you to understand. So as you know, this person here is us, is you, is me, correct? And you are wanting to indulge. For example, I love reading novels. I'm just talking about myself. I love reading more novels there. So sometimes what happens, you start reading and it just goes on, and suddenly you realize you're already 12 a.m. there, and oh God, tomorrow, that's it, morning, can't wake up. So this deadly cycle starts. So so here the next, the all the boga activities we do, the enjoyment activities we do, are considered like has the materials offered to this yajna, the harvest, the materials offered there. So the enjoyment activities, the boga, what all enjoyment activities, you love eating, you have hundreds of wonderful things right in front of you, all your favorite items, and immediately you want to just gobble it up. That is what our tendency is. Or we we want to do something and immediately we want to do it to an extent that we are satiated. Absolutely. So that is there is a rush always to enjoy those activities. And so what Shastriji says, that think that these enjoyment activities are like this harvest, and you are pouring this harvest into this fire. And what is that fire? The fire of restraint. And how do you apply or put this harvest into the fire? In a leisurely approach. Don't be in a rush. Don't be in a rush to involve your senses and the sense objects there, that I have to satisfy my senses there, because that is because it gives me happiness. I have to really satisfy it. Let me just have that rasgulla right in front of me. Let me just gobble it immediately and absolutely be happy. So sometimes what happens, one rasgulla will not make you happy. You will feel like, no, no, I'm not satisfied. I didn't even take the taste of that rasgulla. Immediately it disappeared. Yeah, it just melted in the mouth. Let me have one more rasgulla. One more rasgulla. Okay. Maybe I have one more. What is the problem? Yeah, I'm doing my exercises. It's okay if I gain half a kilo. What's the problem? Let me indulge it. So you have one more. And then you have 4, 5. Then yeah, I think I have reached the limit. Oh God, I would have raised, there's so much inner turmoil that, okay, maybe I will increase my weight. Maybe I have BP, my diabetes. Okay, what to do? So there are so many things which we might be thinking instead of that, can we use all the boga activities which we do in a much more leisurely approach? Can we have an attitude of offering? See, that's why they have, Brahmarpanam, all this, when you sit on the table to eat, just before all the things are there in your plate, and then you close your eyes and chant the Brahmarpanam, the Annapurne, all this chanting there, that will kind of, mellow the speed. So it helps you to bring about prashamana there, that mellows the speed. And after that, we can consciously ensure that we start eating that plate, the whatever is offered there, in a much more leisurely way, instead of gobbling it, because you have a rush to go to the meeting next. So this is where we could do all our activities there. So you don't need to sit and meditate everywhere. Every boga can be transferred into upasana. So this is, but who has the freedom to do? You have the freedom to think that, can I do that? Can I have that ability, that awareness, that mindfulness, and the willingness to go do this? So this is where you will find that there there is no rush there. You would not be rushing onto things. You would have a sense of a gratitude, a sense of offering to the Lord on every action. So how do we do our work usually? So this is a very wonderful example. I wanted to show this, this camera there. And this is how sometimes we view the world, only through the camera lens, absolutely focused. We forget to look at it, or look at all the vicinity, or the periphery angle, and we always want to see only focus so much, because we have these expectations, we feel like that. And because of excessive focusing, what happens? We feel pressure, there is so much of burden. I am fatigued at the end of the day, because sometimes excessively focusing, or we are not, we are doing things, but there is a guilt that, no, I'm not doing properly. I should have done better. The common man always, many times we end up in the guilt sense also. Or we are not in sync what we are doing. So just think of what all things you are doing at home or at your work level, or maybe you have joined a job where you're not in sync. Just think about it. So, I was reading a book, and and it was written that, so do not think that, oh, I have a terrible boss, and that's why my life is really at hell, really unhappy. So what can I do, Prabha? My boss is the reason of my unhappiness. So I'm not able to be in sync with whatever I'm doing. I just hate my job. So at that time, when we think about a positive way of thinking, that okay, let me give a positive affirmation in my mind that I have a wonderful boss. My boss is filled with compassion. I have a wonderful boss. And if you keep thinking that in your mind many times, you keep repeating every day, and look at the boss not as a person who's so negative, and look at the boss as a person who has other qualities also, and slowly you will find that the attitude of the boss changes. So you keep seeing the benefit, you have a rush. We are always in a highly excited state because you look at the benefit on the other end and we suddenly feel so excited and we start rushing onto things. And we start, okay, let me just complete it and just finish off, my work is done. And focusing intensely, like I told you. But how a jnani does? I just saw this. I have a chalta hai attitude. You know, a chalta hai attitude should not be misinterpreted. So it should not be misinterpreted as a very tamasic person. That is, you are stepping up, you are doing the work, you are ready to do in a defocused manner, and then you're going. So that is the way, you know, a jnani does work. Acceptance attitude. The jnani is a person who does karma yogi, is a person who accepts that okay, this is what the situation is. Okay, how do I go about it? I have the freedom, kartum akartum anyata kartum. I have a freedom to do or not to do, refuse to do. Moderation in action. Everything the karma yogi does is moderated. Whether you are in a selfless service or whether you are in a job or any activity or no, ensure that that jnani is doing action in moderation and involved and leisurely. You know, this is when the wonderful combo there. You are focused and defocused. That is, you are concentrating, and but you're also having a leisurely approach. Some things which is not required. So what attitude? Very beautifully, you know, Shastriji says, would have a udasina bhava, anashakti bhava, that's a disinterested attitude in some things, and a sakshi bhava, that is witness. Some things you just be a witness. You don't need to be involved everywhere, put your hands everywhere. Sometimes you can step back, have a leisurely approach. That will be a jnani's work, and that will bring about slowness and patience there. And every action becomes like a yajna. So this is what the jnani does, you know. He offers everything. There is a kind of surrendering. There is a kind of an offering. So the I is dissolved. You feel as if you are only the instrument there. And this jnani has a let go attitude. Everywhere he feels that okay, I'm doing my work. I'm enjoying, but yet I'm having a let go attitude. So like this, you know, the quote says, Yajnatat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanah tadartam karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. So work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work binds one to this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your duties without being attached to the results for the satisfaction of God. Such a wonderful thing. So let's hope all of you are able to absorb this. And the last, you know, the slide here very nicely, ending up my session here is Kayena vacha manasendriyerva buddhyatmana va prakriti swabhavat karomi yadyat sakalam parasmai narayanayeti samarpayami. See, whatever I do with my body, speech, mind, sense organs, I use my intellect, I use my feelings, everything through the natural tendencies of my mind. Whatever I do, let me do without that attachment to the result. Let me just surrender to the lotus feet of the Supreme Guru. So I hope this session was, you know, very informative for all of you. You know, this Eckhart Tolle, I read this, I felt very interesting. That is, forget about your life situation, pay attention to your life. Your life situation is only your mind stuff. Your life is now. So you're all doing your actions, you're all doing your activities, but can we develop a karma yoga attitude? Can we develop that jnani attitude, that let go attitude of whatever the aspects Shastriji has mentioned? Try to at least, you know, instead of, you know, taking all the four aspects, at least maybe try at least one of them, you know, one by one, step by step, try to develop it. And then you would find that there is a kind of a peace within you. Your heart will not be at war. Your heart will be at peace. You would enjoy whatever you're doing. You would find the peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabha, for a wonderful thoughts on what Karma Yoga is all about. So the next speaker is Dr. Vidya. So just sit back and contemplate on what Prabha said, how the work should be, how your attitude to work should be before Vidya starts presenting. Thank you, Vidya.
Thank you, Vidyaji. Just a second, I'll share my screen. Is this screen seen?
Yes,
Yes.
it's seen.
Thank you. Namaste, everyone. Myself, Vidya. I'm a yoga consultant and a naturopath. We'll go through the topic Bhakti Yoga today. What is Bhakti? Narada Bhakti Sutras defines Bhakti as Satvasmin Parama Prema Rupa. He says Bhakti is the most elevated, pure love. So for other yoga, like Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga and other things, you need to do yoga, exercises, pranayama, work, everything. But Bhakti is one, which is like love is one, which is inherent within us. I mean, it's very purely personal. You do not have to do anything. That is, you need not have to inculcate from outside. So how much personal it is? Says Swami Vivekananda. He says, love is as much as you breathe to live. So the analogy is how you need breath to live. That is how love you need for life. So what is love? Then we all know we need not have any definition for this, or we can relate, we can understand. And love is so inherent within us that is, it's not an inculcable habit. It is very spontaneous. See, for example, if we are going out and somebody skids in the bike, and all of a sudden, we either slow down or we either stop or get water bottle to that person. So what was all those things? Why only on the accident? If you just see on the TV, any amount of negativeness is going on somewhere, rape, somewhere murder, somewhere bomb has been exploded. I mean, you feel very, very inside. You feel some that antakarana, it responds. So that is what love is. So it is very so spontaneous, and it is. I mean, it is there everywhere in all. It's a soft emotion. It's all there in the any relationship, like whether it is sakha, friendship, vatsalya, or a pati patni relation, brother and sister relationship. Everywhere we see love is the ingredient. Yet, the irony is, love is the most abused word. And it is most misunderstood word. See, if anybody is there, like if you know that boy and a girl, there is an affair running around them, you just say, see, kuch to chal raha hai dono mein. So that is how, the love is always made that take the trouble of explaining their affair. And it's also misunderstood because generally when you say, oh, those two are in love and all those things, automatically, something is going on between them. And there is nowadays, there are so many divorces and live-in relationship. All these they do, but the burden, the culprit will be the love ultimately. And it is convict in all the negative emotions like moha, Dhritarashtra's love towards his son. It is such a pure emotion, but it has taken a negative connotation. And love jihad, we all know, love is only there for namesake, and everything there is negative against dharma. Then how do we consider this? So what is the reason? Why is this? It's a problem. The reason for love to depreciate, or to take a negative connotation, is the I. Prema becomes kama because of I. See, there are desires and expectations, n number of desires and expectations, intensified desires and expectations within us. We want a husband, we expect a lot from our spouses, whether it's husband or whether it's wife. I expect that we just keep it to ourselves, and we want something from them. I thought he will do that, I expected that he would do that. And that slowly gets into attachment. And the worst part is you take the other person for granted. Yeah, he will do that. Now, slowly, he will do that will become he has to do that. That is the problem. So, at that time, what happens? The sambandha becomes bandhana. There is a burden of relationship. Generally, we speak like this, no, I did everything to you. I did what not I did. I got you this, I got you that. But still, you didn't keep it up. And one more thing, I understand you so much, but you never even think about me. So these kind of things, and this ultimately leads to physical and mental balances. There is no love left over at all. So then how, if love is such a problem, then these are all our situations, isn't it? So in every regular routine basis, we see that. So, but how do we elevate this love to bhakti? Let us just remove I. See, you can't remove I because of the very identity of our appearance, but you can remove the burden of the I. That's what when I mean remove I. What is prema? In prema, you see, I just can't say I love you and I keep quiet. Just by saying I love you and I can't keep quiet, I have to do something to you. There is an aspect of giving. Either I have to give my time, space, energy. I have to give something because I'll feel happy, and if you feel happy, that makes me more happy. And Shastriji also says, Tyaga is a concept in love. It's very common in love. Mother and father, they continuously do sacrifices for their children, and husband does sacrifice to family, wife does sacrifice to family. So, giving and tyaga is one of the characteristic, and also intimacy. Love has intimacy. You need not have to be always together, but still that togetherness, that closeness do appear. So in Bhakti Yoga, what happens? So this giving, and it becomes surrender or Sharanagati Bhava, Arpana Bhava. What shall I give when everything mine is yours? So that is the concept. See, giving is there still, there's a duality. I have something and I give it to you, that. But in surrender, there is nothing like, everything is mine, is yours. There's an offering, there's an arpana, there's a Sharanagati there. See, just a thought came into my mind, like when in old movies and in old books, on old book text, old books, they mention pati patni in the relationship. They say the wife should be, bhaya bhakti irbeku gandange. That bhakti should be there for the husband. Whenever I used to listen to that, I used to feel, how can I show bhakti to some fellow who is equal to me? We consider our husbands as, we are equal gender, equality. Husband is equal to wife and wife is equal to husband. Why should I ever surrender to him? Yeah, that was the idea. But now, when I see, it was so explicitly told to women only. Because there is a catch, I feel. See, a lady or a girl who comes from a different family, has a different identity, a different attitude, and she's coming into another family which has a different culture, different attitude, different mindset. Uh, so if I keep up my ego and I just can't gel with the family. So this happens when you are doing any project. There are team members around you. So what you do, you can't say like, no, 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 this is what I want to do, so I will do what I want to do. You can't say that. You have to understand the psyche of all the other people, their plus and their minus, and then you slowly put it up, isn't it? So that is how, in the same way in the family, in when you're running a family, when you enter into a family, it's also the same thing. You try to understand, you surrender yourself first, and then you try to learn. A wife always does that. She surrenders first, and then she tries to get everything into her control. And now you say, not only wife, even husband also surrenders to wife. Right, like, including Sri Rama, who was an Ekapatni Vratasta, even husband in our house also. You just see, they can't do anything other than, without wife, for running the family, for everything. But they are so implicitly done. It is implicitly done. It is not told in explicitly, just like in the culture like us. So this is the idea. And in bhakti, the intimacy gets into reverence. This is much more than giving respect. It has everything, this reverence. I mean, this is this is more than intimacy. This is more than giving respect. The That's what I feel. I mean, I don't have words to explain that. But if this is bhakti, is it? But for us, a thinking mind. See, earlier, if you had spoken to my earlier generations, understanding bhakti was much more easier than the generations coming now, and even our generation also. It is very difficult for us to understand what is bhakti itself. To understand, to get that concept itself is very difficult, because we just can't, how can I surrender something to somebody? Right, whether is that fellow is right or wrong, whether he's doing correct or not, all these things come. How can Ganesha have that Sondilu? We get all those doubts. In the book, Shastriji says, convinced about the importance, it becomes easy for you to follow Bhakti Yoga. So this is such a good, very insightful sentence, I felt. Convinced about the importance of Bhakti Yoga, you can just, that is the most easiest path, he says. If only one can comprehend this feeling, if only one can feel such a kind of feeling to somebody, then this is the beautiful thing. But are we really unaware of bhakti? Just because we have thinking mind and all these things, are we really unaware of it? Let us just check this. Appreciation. We appreciate the family and the friends, isn't it? If they do something good, we'll say, yeah, wonderful, you did a very good job. Isn't it we appreciate heroines and artists and musicians? That too, if somebody does a 2 or 3 hour kacheri, you feel like, and it is an overwhelming presentation, you just feel like going and touching his feet. Hey, why should you touch the feet? You just appreciate it, it's fine. But why did you go and touch the feet? That means you have surrendered to that knowledge, to that Saraswati within him. And now it happens even in the nature also. In nature, like if you see, if you go to a beachside or to the ocean, when you see sunset and sun or sunrises on a hilly a hilly area, mountain area, so you feel you are so mesmerized seeing that, and we generally, automatically our hands come closer, saying, yeah, what a creation is this, who created this, you just try to bow your hands, automatically it comes, you need not have to inculcate that and say, no, I have to bow. No, it automatically, wow, what a creation, who is the creator? So you try to appreciate that. And everything, that's what the sadhana goes, if this happens in everything in life, each and every moment in life, even we'll be able to appreciate the negativity around us. See, we say that, no, oh, that kind of fellow, oh my goodness, I've never seen. Devrati, ಏನು ಸೃಷ್ಟಿ ಮಾಡಿದಾನೆ. isn't it? So that means to say, even that, see, we taking situation into control and giving him back for any negative, we responding to that, that's a different issue. But after seeing all these things negative outside, you feel, "Baapre, who created this? God is really great. Amidst all these positiveness, there's so much of negativeness. So still you go down, what a creation it is, isn't it? So with all these thing, and if this perception of seeing everything in life in the way of appreciation, if this becomes an abhyasa, just imagine, won't it be the moments of bhakti each time? So what happens, whether it's few moments of appreciation or moment to moment appreciation, when we just see that it is your mind which is slowing down, there is nidhanya and expansiveness. There is no rush. There is no that ego clashes at all. That I drops down and only expansiveness remains. Well, this was all in when you're in the calm state, everything. But what if the situation is out of your control? Well, all the situations are out of our control. If that was a situation, then we would have controlled everything. At that time, our buddhi gets masked. This detached outlook and everything, maybe it may work for real sadhakas or those who have done real sadhana, they can just leave it and come out of it. But a very new and beginner sadhakas, it will be like, buddhi doesn't work. Logic never works when there is such a situation where it is totally out of your control. There is no logic, we want some magic to happen. So at that time only, Sankata Bandaga Venkataramana, you take care of everything. So that is when we surrender our I, that is the thinking I, we just put it onto the Almighty. Just like a baby monkey clinging onto the mother monkey. You let it jump anywhere, but the monkey is so fine holding the mother monkey. There is this shloka which explains there is no gati, gati eva nasti, gatir nasti tvameva sharanam mama, tasmat karunya bhavena raksha raksha janardana. But there's a catch here. Shastriji says, you need a lot of courage and conviction to have this kind of attitude. Even if we go to temple, or even if we say that, oh, you see, take care of everything, but still, there will be an idea that, oh, yalla devaru madbidtana. Does everything God will do? No, I also have to do something. See, ultimately, it is we only have to do something. It is nothing that like God will come and do our work. But that burden of I, what I am doing is not there. He is making me to do, just I am doing it. This kind of attitude is brought about within us. So even here, as soon as you surrender yourself, what happens? If you just check inside yourself, there is nidhanya and it leads to expansiveness. That's slow down and that leads to expansiveness. And now, why should we have that nidhanya and expansiveness? That's what when I said yesterday, Shastriji said you make two compartments in your mind so that let us be covered with that silence. And the silence, the Swarupa Sthiti, is the characteristics of this Swarupa Sthiti is the nidhanya and expansiveness. So through all these means, we can maintain that silence within us. And the outside vyapara goes on its own, just like the tortoise is, like yesterday what I said. You're there in that cover up, and now slowly you put out the tentacles, you do whatever you want to do, and you come out. And of course, by that you are not reducing your effectiveness, not there is faking of your emotions. In fact, everything is 100% effective than before. But unfortunately, we are there where we don't even know that our Swarupa is to be silent and it is totally overlapped by the activity. So the only thing is we should be aware that we have to stay in this Swarupa Sthiti and then just do the just do the thing as work, as Leela. Just do the Vyapara activity just like that. So yeah, we know that, but that's what I said. It takes a whole lifetime to practice this. And there are different ways, like Swamiji said, whether you use karma, bhakti, jnana, whatever it is, just try to be within this silence. So whether you use one or you use the combination, permutation, combination, whatever, try to remain in this Swarupa Sthiti. So bhakti is also one of the way here. So to sum it up, we have strived to reach this Swarupa Sthiti. Now the way path today what we have selected is from prema to bhakti. There's a transition from prema to bhakti, and this leads to Brahma Samipyam. And that's what Shastriji says. There is not that you're not attaining, you will attain Brahma Tattva. He doesn't say. He says, let us move towards the Samipyam. That's what we can do. That is our thing. That is our job. We can just silence it as much as possible we can just move towards the silence as nearer as possible. And that by the grace of Guru and the God, Brahma Tattva or Brahma Sthiti, it happens. So whatever the means, I think we have to keep up the sadhana, take any pathway. So ultimate thing is we have to reach this sadhana. Now, before ending this, I just want to take a few seconds in singing a small bhajan, just 2-3 lines of the bhajan. I request all of you to just sit back, close your eyes. I am not a very good singer, though I have tried to sing just 2-3 lines, because bhakti yoga without namasmarana is always, it seems incomplete. Radhe 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 Govinda Vrindavana Chanda Anathanatha Dina Bandho Radhe Govinda Nanda Kishora Navanita Chora Radhe Govinda Vrindavana Chanda Anathanatha Dina Bandho Radhe Govinda Pandarinatha Panduranga Radhe Govinda Vrindavana Chanda Anathanatha Dina Bandho Radhe Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Vrindavana Chanda Anathanatha Dina Bandho Radhe Govinda Radhe Govinda Radhe Govinda. Dhanyavada. Thank you so much for the patient listening.
Thank you, Vidya. I think the last bhajan was the ultimate to this. I could see that you were enjoying yourself, swinging to the song that you were singing. I think that is there with all of us, right? You are in a bhajan or a music session. You also, put the beats and you also swing, or that bhava comes. You forget all the worries and you are into it. So before Raghuramji takes over, I would just like to ask Dr. Vidya, because she is one who has been associated with Shastriji right from the teenage age. She has been attending his satsang. So I would like to ask you, what was your learning at that time when you were a teenager? And what was your influence at that time when you later went on to do your BNYS and then now? So can you just share your insights or share your learning from that association with Shastriji and association with the satsang that you had?
Yeah, I'm very happy to share, because talking about Shastriji, it is so nostalgic and brings those days to my mind. See, it was when I met him, I was a teenager, as I said. it was a normal teenage, but I don't know all of a sudden why suddenly there was hovering of few questions like who am I and for what I'm here. So all these questions used to come. And generally it is a thing like, parents or your other family members or your friends, they say, oh, just, I was just in, I think first PUC or second PUC I was. So they used to say like, maybe you want to run away, escape from your exams and all those things. You can't sit quiet and read. So for all those things, you are making these nakras. So, but I had a lot of restlessness in me. I didn't know to whom to say and whatever. So at that time, I think I happened to meet I went to Prashanti where I met all the yoga experts who were there. Even there, they used to say, "Yeah, sit down, you calm down yourself, do yoga and everything." But nobody, what do you say, acknowledge the question, what I'm going, what I'm undergoing, all those things. But when I met Shastri ji, like I had heard his few of his talks. So as I said, yoga doesn't, at that age, nothing goes into your head, such big ideas doesn't go. But Shastri ji was like, he took something, whatever he said, something at that age I could comprehend. And I thought I should go and speak to him. So when I spoke, I just went and said, like, Shastri ji, like, these are the ideas which I'm getting. What is this? See, as I said, he never brushed away anybody, whether it's a 17-year-old or a 70-year-old, whether you are an intellectual one or not one. Still, he answered me. He said the first thing was, okay. He said, don't leave these questions go away. So keep these questions. Uh, because maybe you may not get answer. Slowly you may get the answer. So, uh, and that gave me such confidence then. That means I'm not a stupid to ask such questions, because other people, other my friends, they were thinking about the career and everything for new college, what they have to get admitted, the marks, everything. But I was lingering around with this questions. And so that was first confidence he gave me. And then and that also made me to think that, okay, there is ahead, something is there to in life. I need not have to become a, that was the idea which I had, like, oh, everybody is saying about slow down, slow down. No, that is an age, where you want to achieve everything and anything in the world. So that's how, then I thought, then when he said, okay, we can do something, I also have the pathway to go ahead, but I need not have to leave these questions. So that was one thing which he built confidence in me. So that made me to attend the lectures, whatever lectures, wherever he gave, whether it's in Prashanti or in Bangalore, anywhere, I used to make it a point I attended. And that, even in my study phase, during my BNY when I joined, that gave me so much confidence. That is the phase where highest confidence was instilled in me. And now, though, like when I have, after 20 years down the lane, after I have met him, during all the situations where I come across in life now, I suddenly remember, oh yeah, Shastriji had said this, had said that. Oh, that's what he meant now. Now I am understanding, okay, this is what he said, this is what he meant. I hope I had some buddhi then to comprehend whatever he said. So all humble pranams to him. And thank you, Yoga Bharati, for organizing this one and giving me time to speak about him. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Vidya. I remember because during our interactions you would say, yeah, right. I know now in this situation I remember what Shastriji used to tell me. Why didn't I think of that before? Yeah, so it was good that you shared your insight, how it gave you confidence. Yes, all of us have that question, right? At that age, I think all of us are restless. So this kind of a confidence, if somebody gives us, yeah, so that we are able to balance and move ahead in our life. Yeah, over to Raghuramji.
Oh, namaste, all of you, particularly. It is very nice to hear Prabha sharing the ideas and Vidya sharing the ideas. particularly Vidya, went through the whole connection with Shastriji. And, very, very revered person for me also. And also the theme for this series of talks that we had. Wonderful. That is very nice. And this Karma Yoga, she's given a very beautiful idea that it is Yajna Drishti. She almost culminated with that idea of Yajna Drishti. And this Yajna Drishti is something which is extraordinary Indian concept. And everywhere Yajna is going on. Everywhere Yajna is going on. In the nature, only thing is that with the Western mind, we don't see that kind of a thing happening. And not only that, we don't have a better word in English, so that we put the word called as sacrifice. At the moment yajna, sacrifice idea comes, a lot of people start thinking that it is sacrificing the animal, sacrificing the goat, sacrificing this. It's totally a wrong direction that it takes. So Shastriji had it in mind, but then in this book it did not come very eloquently, but I just would like to share. The idea is that, like for example, a seed, when you plant, when the proper environment is found, the seed starts its journey until the time it is there inside, somewhere in a packet, but then the moment you put it in the ground and then water is there, sunlight is there, everything is there, the journey starts. But when the journey starts, if you are in the seed consciousness, actually it is not a journey starting, but it is an ending of seed. If you remember, if you think that you are the seed, it is not that there is anything great happening. All that what you see is that with all those things being surrounded by all those things, that you feel suffocated, you feel that all those things are really pouncing on you, and then you are ending. And at the end of you, but then actually it may be the end of the seed, but what really happens is a plant comes up. So that means to say seed has to sacrifice its seedness to become a plant. It's not that seed has to sacrifice, but it is the seedness has to be sacrificed. That means don't limit yourself to that seedness. Then you go to the tree-ness, and then the tree also sheds everything so that it becomes again the soil and becomes bigger tree, greater tree. So the journey continues. So this natural journey which is going on, beautiful journey that's going on, is what is called as yajna. So there the seedness is sacrificed, and when that means to say we sacrifice or we give up the limited ego to become a larger ego, bigger ego. And then we give that bigger ego to become like all-pervasive consciousness. That's what is Brahman. And this is the idea when we sing a beautiful Yajna Drishti kind of a shloka from Bhagavad Gita. Brahmarpanam Brahmahavi Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. The one who is offering is also Brahman, and that which is offered to is also Brahman. And the process is Brahman. That's what is Brahma Karma. And ultimately what is the result is also Brahman. So therefore this is what is the way Brahma is the activity that's going on. This is what is supposed to be the Yajna Drishti. But here I would like to recollect that idea that this particular mantra also goes with Yajna Drishti, where we say that Brahma Havihi, Brahmagno, Brahmanahutam. Havis is the ghee that we put in the fire. And ghee has to go through so much of journey, because in the nature that you don't find the ghee as it is. It's only the milk that you find. And the milk that you put in the fire, that milk only kills the fire. Milk does not quench the fire. It does not assist the fire or help the fire. It will only quenches the fire. But that milk has to go through this transformation to become a curd, yogurt, and even yogurt will not help you. And then, but there is one small little thing, that milk is supposed to be cold, and yogurt is supposed to be Ushna in Ayurveda. There are reasons for that. But then that you try to churn, and when you churn, actually yogurt has butter in that, but then that butter will not help you. That butter can only become a fat in our body. It will not help in the fire. But then when you try to churn it, and then this butter which is there inside the yogurt will float, will not become part of the buttermilk that is there, but it floats. It now gets separated. And that separation, very carefully that we need to handle it, take it out, and then simmer it on the fire gently in such a way that it has to be proper way that has to be done. After that, when you simmer, then ghee comes out, and then you filter and then take the ghee out. What milk that used to really quench the fire, whereas the same ghee which comes out from that milk will actually assist the fire, will make the fire glow. That means to say that is the essence of the milk that is there. So in the same way that we need to find our essence, and for that to see that we have so many desires, so many angers, and so many angularities, and wrong, the sharp edges and all those things, angularities that we have, all those things have to be dissolved, and out of which that we need to find out what is the best aspect of us, most important aspect of it, and that will help the world to grow. That is the best thing that can help the world to grow. And after that, when you put the ghee into the fire, ghee will not leave any residue. That means to say you don't have any vasanakshaya, you don't have any tendencies that is left behind. That's what is the Brahma Drishti. And this is what is the Yajna Drishti that we need to do. And this, a beautiful example that Upanishad gives and Shastras give us about the ghee. But then this has to be the way that we look at in our day-to-day life and every activity. What I mean to say is that the best of it that we bring about it, and then we surrender, we give it, so that I'm not left with any residue whatsoever, so that my ego will not be there. I surrender completely. And that surrender aspect is what is given in the Bhakti Yoga eloquently. In fact, we do not know what bhakti is, but then what we know is an emotion called as love. And love is like something which passes through a prism, like the way that when the light passes through the prism, gives different colors. Same way that when this love passes through the prism, it gives various colors in the form of compassion, appreciation. Prema becomes like appreciation, sense of wonder. And also we have Bhatru Prema, Pritu Prema, Vatsalya. And more important thing is, for an elder, it is in the form of a Shraddha. Of all these things, the last one that to say, for the whole creation in front of us, that's what becomes like Bhakti. Bhakti encompasses everything. Bhakti does not dispute with anything. Bhakti does not have anything to work against it. This way, when we are able to achieve that, this is what is enriching that love. Love is something which is at the mind level, and it tries to transcend the mind. It is literally helps us to transcend the mind. But if you allow it to happen, then it transcends. Otherwise, what happens soon, it is corrupted, and the corrupted by our ego. Ego comes up, then prema becomes kama, and then appreciation becomes possession. And when it is corrupted by ego, then immediately you start saying that, look, I have done all those things, what is there for me? It becomes greed. So greed, anger, jealousy, hatred, these are all also emotions, but these are violent emotions. And there are not several violent emotions. There is only one thing, that's what is ego. That's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Dambho Darpo Vimanasya Krodha Parushyameva. All these things are the Asuri Sampat. What a wonderful thing that was Prema. And then the moment that ego, like a poison, drop of poison gets into the milk, spoils the whole thing. The whole aspect of love is corrupted by ego becoming anger, hatred, jealousy, all these things. So therefore, what we need to do is to see that dissolve this ego. Don't allow this ego to corrupt our wonderful emotions like love. Love unites, whereas hatred divides. Love brings us together. Compassion makes the other very important, whereas the complaint becomes the other unimportant. Similarly, you see sense of wonder at once transports you that you're appreciating the creator. But then the moment that you say possession, that means to say you would like to have it, upper hand about that. That's why ego just draws a boundary from you and the world. Though in reality, there's no boundary at all. But then we create that boundary. That's where basically people then, they start with love, they start with compassion, they give out of compassion, out of love they give and all those things. But the moment ego enters into, they say, I gave you 1, 2, 3, what did you give me? So that means basically there's no more love. There's only, it's like a business that you're doing. And business you're doing with love. I give you love, you give me love. You put the condition also. First you love me, then I will love you. Wow. Where have we gone? Great people are great. They never waited for the others to ask for the others to love. And that is what greatness of Swami Vivekananda. You know, the small little incident that is there in the life of Swami Vivekananda. When he was in the school, in the college, actually in the school, his name is Naren, and he used to go to Thakur, Ramakrishna. There were several other people used to come, 30, 40 people, and then Thakur always used to wait for, where is Naren? Naren has come, and all that. He used to have extraordinary love for Naren. And the moment Naren appears, immediately he will stop what he is talking and say, Naren has come. And then give them place, and then Naren let him come in. So he should come close to him. Not only that, Thakur would say, come on, eat some sweet, do this thing. How was the school? Everything that he would ask. It was so excessive that people started feeling a little odd that Thakur has so much love for Naren. So therefore, there was one intellectual person and very nice person, Surendra. Surendra was a lawyer. So he took up the responsibility and then he wanted to tell Thakur in a very nice language, Thakur, you should not show your love to Naren so much, because the children, when you show love, then they become arrogant, they become egotistic. It's not good. Immediately Thakur realized that, so my showing love is going to spoil Naren, then I don't want to do it. You see, any other way saying he would not have accepted it, but it can spoil Naren, immediately accepted it. Oh, so I should not show my love to Naren. But then after some time, then he went into trance, and then when he came back from the trance, he called Surendra, hey Suren, you said that my love can spoil Naren? Divine Mother says, you know, he goes into Samadhi and Divine Mother says, nothing can spoil Naren. Forget about it. Surendra thought with that great difficulty with lot planning, I told Thakur, but Thakur just simply did not realize that. But then it did not stop there. 15 days later, slowly 1 month later, he stopped showing his love for Naren. Naren would come and sit down. He would not inquire about Naren. Naren would come and sit down on one side. Thakur will turn to the other side and talk as if he's ignoring Naren. And Naren sits somewhere else. He doesn't even ask him to come closer to him. Everybody felt so bad because Naren is such a wonderful boy of all qualities that you can think of. And then there is no way that you can dislike Naren. He's such a wonderful person. And they couldn't stand the way that Thakur does not have his love for Naren. And Thakur is so cold to Naren. And it was so unbearable for particularly Surendra himself. He said to Naren, hey Naren, you know what? Thakur used to love you so much, would welcome you so much all the year. But I don't know what really happened. I think probably the familiarity, and that's what the contempt caused for the rest. So therefore, why don't you do one thing? There is nothing wrong with you. Please don't mistake. You are a wonderful person. Just because Thakur does not love you does not mean that there is anything negative about you. Don't feel depressed. But do one thing. Don't come for a few days. Then I'm sure that Thakur will miss you. And then he starts inquiring about you. Please don't come for a few days because Thakur has no love for you. A very simple, straightforward way. Naren replies to Surendra saying that, sir, I come here because I love him, not because he loves me. Wow, what an extraordinary truth. What an extraordinary wisdom. A boy had that kind of a thing. Thakur did all those things is to test the love of Naren. It is so pure, so unconditional. Not, that is what is the love itself is unconditional. So let us not unnecessarily put the condition by bringing in the ego. What is that which corrupts all our transactions is this ego. And Thakur, Shastriji is one person where you could not see that ego. Because of that reason, whether it is somebody who is learned or who is not learned, who is young or old, and he is educated, uneducated, Shastriji's respect for them is equal, is the same. And that's what is the experience of Vidya, and not only Vidya. Her mother also used to come to Shastriji, and so many others who would come to Shastriji. That is one thing they would always say, that here is a man who is a knowledge without ego, but is compassion without ego. It is one who has a wisdom without ego, and more importantly, guys, he's elderly without ego. We are very fortunate to have Shastriji's guidance, and this book is there for us to give this idea. The author who has written this book, he said, sir, this book is so much in its content. We should at least have 4 books so that people will read and reread and reread. This is a Manana Grantha. I'm so glad that this opportunity, Shastriji's memorial, our group, our family, has taken the task of going through this, understanding, enjoying, absorbing, and presenting these ideas to everybody. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Wish you all the best.
Yeah, thank you, Raghuramji, for a wonderful summation. And if you have any questions, you can put. No, right now the book is not available on Flipkart. It is available with Yoga Bharati. So you can send a mail to info@yogabharati.net to get the details of how do you order the book. Right now you can place a Dunzo order because still the lockdown is there. We can't be going to the courier office to courier it. So if you can arrange for a Dunzo pickup, if you are in Bangalore, you can arrange for a Dunzo pickup. Otherwise, we'll have to see how do we arrange for a delivery. So maybe we'll have to wait for we are trying to see how it can be made available either in Amazon or Flipkart. So we are working on that. We will keep you informed. Thank you. If any questions, you can put it in the chat. One more thing, Raghuramji, that you would always talk about, right? In the path of bhakti,
Yeah.
It is about that you get that, that feeling, right?
Yes.
The tripto bhavati, amrito
Right.
bhavati. So
Yeah.
can you explain a little more about that?
The tripti that you get in love, all the way spanning up to the bhakti, that means to say, a child is there and you can see the mother and child interaction there. The kind of tripti, satisfaction that the mother gets, it is a totally different level of tripti, because the tripti, what we normally know otherwise, is a satisfaction through one particular sensory organ. And there is always an agenda behind that. Like, for example, I should be thirsty, so that I enjoy, I get that feeling of tripti, satisfaction. Hammaya, I'm satisfied when I drink water. But it's a prerequisite is that I should be really thirsty. Similarly, when I'm hungry, then the food that comes, then I really feel that sense of satisfaction. Ah, so nice. Particularly in the marriage functions and all that, people are waiting and waiting and waiting. And then marriage is not. And then suddenly they say, come on, food is ready. Now we can have it. You can see that how the satisfaction that you get. Music, I want to listen to nice music and then I'm not getting it. Suddenly I come across that music. Many times what happens is when you are surprised with that kind of a thing, and that gives you kind of a satisfaction. I was traveling in Germany and I was really, in whole Europe, I was just waiting for somewhere some nice, wonderful classical music I hear. And then we stopped at a gas station to fill up the gas, myself and my German friend. Suddenly we saw a small board, small sticker there saying that Hari Prasad Chaurasia is playing flute this evening in this place. So anybody interested can contact this number. Wow. It's like, we jump. And then we went there. Can you believe it that he is playing flute and then I'm sitting right in front of him. We were totally about 30 people in that place. It's an extraordinary, wonderful feeling. But then the satisfaction is for one particular sensory organ. I want to listen to the music and I get the music, then my sensory organ called ears will be satisfied. I'm hungry, I get the food. Then when I eat the food, the satisfaction that I get is to my hunger center. But when I'm hungry and somebody says, I will play you nice, wonderful music, no, the agency is different and sensory organ is different. They don't match, there's a mismatch. It's not a satisfaction that you can get. On the other hand, hungry stomach, you cannot enjoy that music also. Be careful about that because you can meet with such accidents. Once it so happened for me, I was in Calcutta. Bengali people roll the words. So came to know that I was there, they immediately came to me and said, Aguram, we invite you to our house for Bhojan. So in Bhojan, we understand as food in any language because in Sanskrit it is food. I went there hungry and we were sitting and singing and singing and singing bhajans. I thought when the bhajan is over, the food will be ready. After 2 hours of singing, the owner comes to me and says, I hope you have really enjoyed it. Now you can go. Then I realized the mistake that I've done. Bhajan otherwise will give me satisfaction, but when I'm hungry, it's not. Like this, the normal sense of satisfaction we have is for one particular sensory organ and for a short period of time. When you are in the state of love, love does not belong to any particular sensory organ. It belongs to the mind. So the whole mind, which is a central unit for all sensory organs, inner, outer senses, at once they feel satisfied, extraordinarily satisfied. And whenever satisfaction happens, this is another important truth. My tongue is satisfied, I transcend the tongue. My ears are satisfied, I transcend the ear. And the mind is satisfied, mind-intellect combination, satisfied, chitta is satisfied. Then I transcend the chitta. Transcending the chitta is what Patanjali calls as chitta vritti nirodha. And transcending the chitta takes us to Atmasthiti. There's only one thing that's available in the Atmasthiti. Therefore, the satisfaction that you get in the bhakti is like the way that you have summed up all that is satisfaction within you, and then they're at once satisfied so that you are in the Atmasthiti. That's why Narada says, Trupto bhavati, Atmaramo bhavati. If you have any experience of Atmasthiti, two occasions we have that Atmasthiti. One is when we are in deep sleep, and the other is when we're in the state of love. In the deep sleep, you are not aware of it because you are not there. Whereas in love, you are wakeful, and that is the experience. Unfortunately, what happens, because that lack of knowledge, we hold on to the object, not on to that, the Atmasthiti within. If you can hold on to the Atmasthiti and don't have an attachment to the object outside, you can enlevel, you can enrich the love that is there within you. When you enrich love, that's what is bhakti. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Raghuramji.
Thank you.
There's one question about, can you talk about Nishkama Karma?
Yeah. See, one thing that karma is actually about the fruit of action, the resultant of an action. You don't have any karma for doing a work. We always say that, if I get the result without doing the work, I'm prepared to take it. I'll get paid my salary without working. Oh, I'll be the first person to jump and go that. The karma is always not attached to the work, but karma is attached with the result of an action. Nishkama means basically that there is no karma for any fruit of action. So therefore, first thing is that you work without the fruit of action. Karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. But then there is another aspect of it in Nishkama karma. There is second aspect or deeper aspect, that is where saying that the nature is doing the work already. How much of nature activity is going on? And then within also that the nature is working. So when you think that way, then the doer, that means to say activity who does it, he is not there. This is what is the idea. Krishna gives a beautiful idea. There are two aspects. One is the karma and the other is kriya. Kriya is what is happening. Karma is what you do it. Can you convert karma into kriya? That means to say, I am not doing it, everything is kriya. This is what is Nishkama karma, or that's what is called as the siddhi, is called as Naishkarmi siddhi. The doer himself is not there. I do is not there. It's happening. Oh,
Vishya, you are on mute.
not audible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes love gives us pain, and if bhakti and love go hand in hand, then does bhakti give pain?
Actually, when the love gives the kind of a pain, that is what Narada says, viraha sakti. That means to say separation. And then Meera in her bhajan, she says that, hey Krishna, I loved you so much. I never realized that I used to love you so much, because now I can see that the amount of viraha shows that how much I loved you. So viraha is a measure for me to see that how much I love you, how much I miss you. So like that, bhakti and viraha and love, these are all the same thing in different forms. The same thing. It's like the way that the prism will give the various colors. It's like that. Viraha is one of those colors. And therefore, Narada says, viraha, parama viraha sakti. Don't have that ordinary viraha. It should be parama viraha. And that's what gave rise to all these shlokas of Gita Govindam. Gita Govindam, all the songs that Gita Govindam, extraordinary degree of songs that they are there. And they're all nothing but expression of that viraha. Savirahe tavadina, Radha, all that. In fact, Radha Krishna have raised the concept of Radha Krishna has really taken over from the Vedanta, from the Advaita, from all these things, even the Dvaita Siddhanta and all those things that has taken to different heights, to the heights of Himalaya. It is because of this beautiful feeling that was there about the viraha. Yeah.
It says in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna,
Yeah.
in the Gospel, he puts prema as the ultimate emotion above bhakti. So in the Bhakti Yoga, it is the other way around. So please clarify.
There is no question of anything higher or lower. Prema Ramakrishna mentions because that's where we have the experience. If you talk about prema, it's there in everybody's experience. If it is a person who doesn't even believe in God, prema is something which is there. In fact, that's why Jesus also says, you don't have to believe in God, have love. That's good enough. Like that. So therefore, prema that way is higher. In fact, Narada also says the same thing. He says that God is great, all right. But more important thing is that even God is not there. Guru is something which is very important, better than God. He says, because the simple thing is, Guru is available for you. that means you can interact with you. What we need to really learn about this is, from this point, is that God is a concept for us. It's not that somebody is sitting on the heaven and doing some kind of activity there. In the other religions have this idea. They have assumed God. We have never assumed God. In Indian culture, God is a concept that we have. That is how it makes sense to us.
Hello, Vijaya.
Yeah, and I think in like you used to always expect, go beyond prema and reach that bhakti bhava. Here in bhakti, we're not expecting anything. It is just surrender.
Yeah, surrender, dissolve.
Yes. So I think no more questions. If you have any further questions, you could always put in the group, and we would get back to you.
But I'm glad
With
about the
that-
wonderful standard of questions and focused on the sadhana. I'm really very happy about that.
So before we end, can I request all the teachers who gave the sessions to come on the video mode? Vidya, Mukund, Bala, Vindhya.
I think Vijaya, many are not there. Maybe tomorrow we could. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's okay. No, let them just come. Whoever is there can come on video mode. Yeah, so thank you. I think, as Raghuramji said, each one of us have taken that pain to understand what Shastriji was trying to talk about, maybe experienced that, lived that for the last 1 month or so that we were planning about this course, I think, right? Having the interaction, discussion, and like, and even, and I think all of us are also satisfied the way the whole Let Go series went about. So thank you all once again. So let's end the session with the Omkara and the Shanti mantra. Namaskara Mudra. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. Sarve Santu Niramaya. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti. Shanti, Shanti. Thank you all. So tomorrow will be the concluding session. So please join us 6 o'clock. So where we will, Raghuramji will just give us a, take us through the entire, right from the In Search of Our True Nature to the different prakriyas that we went through to the sadhana part of it. So we will wrap up the session tomorrow. And if you have any more questions, you could always come up with your questions tomorrow. So thank you. Bye. Good night.
Good night, Raghuramji. Good night, everyone.